Litchfield Park Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order. Pledge of Allegiance, is that something that we want to stand and do, or each one do it in our hearts? And since I don't have a flag here.
Oh,
Well, we
we have one here.
We can stare at
Okay,
the screen.
we have been doing it. It's up to you.
Why don't we move on to the business at hand? The
Okay.
Minor general plan amendment and rezoning applications for the Sun Health owned properties of La Loma campus located at northwest corner of Camelback and Litchfield Roads. And I think it's Jason.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Ross and commissioners. Just for the record, I believe Ms. Overholtzer, the attorney representing Sun Health, is on the Zoom meeting watching, as well as Paul Vanderveen. And there's a gentleman by the name of Richard Gerke, and then Lynn Lamb from Hildar Wilson is also in the meeting. So I believe they're all here on behalf of Sun Health. Thank you, Ellen. I see you, and then Lisa's joined as well. So what I'd like to do, Chair, is kind of discuss the staff report that was sent out to you, kind of give you some of the rationale behind the way it was presented to you, really, obviously very black and white. We presented to the City Council last February, I think it was February 12th, and we were requested to do a very clear, concise kind of what it is in terms of entitlements and rights that the property currently has or enjoys for development, and what is proposed. So I know that you have the illustrative booklets that were prepared by Sun Health and submitted as part of their rezoning case. And that illustrative booklet really kind of tells the story. It combines, the nuts and bolts of the development standards and zoning districts, the design guidelines that they're proposing, but it also includes a lot of graphics and other things to kind of tell the story of where they're at now and where they intend to go as they seek to develop the property in the continuum of care guidelines. So that said, the staff report is very much kind of to kind of distill from that illustrative booklet so you can see in black and white what's before and after. For example, I'm just pulling up and reviewing my own staff report on my screen. The first page of the staff report really goes to the background and discussion. So there is a minor general plan amendment accompanying the rezoning case for plan development for the property. And that would redesignate the 30 acres of property that's currently designated as commercial to the mixed use public facility agritourism land use designation, kind of rejoining that 38 acres back to the property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to do a brief PowerPoint for you. And that will show you what you need to see here. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to manage Zoom and also the PowerPoint at the same time. Give me 1 second. So first I'm going to share my screen and go through my PowerPoint presentation. It's relatively short. And then the applicant, Ms. Overholtzer, has her own PowerPoint. I'm not sure if it's herself or Ms. Gage that's going to present, but I'll turn the controls of the Zoom over to them, and then they're going to do their own PowerPoint. And then I believe, at the will of the chair and commissioners, will obviously answer questions so we can get through the study session. It's the applicant's hope and intent that the next time we meet would be for a public hearing in which you can take action. Of course, as this discussion ensues, if you want to go, if you feel comfortable with that, or if you prefer yet another study session after this, certainly we can discuss that. So that said, I'm going to put on my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. All right. You should be able to see it now. Can you see it? All right. Great. Yeah. So we'll do a brief PowerPoint. I took an excerpt from their booklet to kind of give you the full story of where we're going with this. You might be asking, okay, the property is being rezoned to public facility or to planned development. In my mind, I think of public facility as, perhaps city-owned property, community centers, things like that. But within public facility, there's an allowed use called continuum of care. And so because this development is all tied to the healthcare facilities on the campus as managed by Sun Health, the intention is that this project as a whole, as we reviewed it, would be comprised of a lot of mixed use commercial and residential, higher density residential, maybe condos or apartments or villas, It also would include single-family homes. So while that type of development you would typically see in like residential zones, residentially zoned property wouldn't have the same restrictions and requirements that this property would. This is really intended to be an age-restricted 55+ community, and all of the residents would be tied to the Sun Health wellness facilities and medical facilities. So it's intended as a master planned campus dedicated to healthcare, as you can see at the bottom of my screen. It's intended for health-related services, including the continuum of care living, and it's all on a single campus. So that's why you'll see all of this residential and mixed use and all of these sorts of facilities all within one zoning district, because it all falls inside of continuum of care. So getting back to the minor general plan amendment that I noted earlier, this companion case that goes with the large rezoning case would take this commercial block that you see over here along Camelback Road that was established several years ago. You might recall back in 2014 when we had the slew of general plan amendments, for those of you that were on the commission at the time or just a member of the public. There had been an intent to develop that property for commercial uses, kind of almost a strip retail development. So the general plan amendment got pushed through. We didn't really rezone the property at that time to do it. It just kind of got on the map. And really this application's intended to kind of take that back and just absorb that commercial property into the larger public facility agritourism mixed use project that you see on the right. So it's kind of just cleaning the map up. The PD, that is plan development rezoning request, this is the long form version of it just on your screen here. You can see that they're taking the proposed rezoning from and to. They're going to take 52 acres of PF and rezone it to 38 and 13 acres respectively of PF and agritourism with PD overlay. The largest lion's share of the acreage here is really taking the residential estate zoning of the property that restricts really the uses to residential and large lots, taking that from residential estate over into public facility with the plan development overlay. That's where you're going to see the bulk of the proposed residential development that's coming with this project that would be built out over a series of phases. And then down below, you've got a little bit of that neighborhood commercial going back into PF and agritourism. So the total acreages are at the bottom. So the total rezoning case is approximately 321 acres, split between PF and agritourism. Here's kind of a map to map. So the from on the left shows you where the residential estate is, more or less is, gosh, 2/3 of the property or more, 3/4 almost, that wraps all the way the whole west half of the property and then almost the north half. And then if you look over on the right side of the slide, you'll see a better indication of what they're rezoning to. So the commercial and all that stuff will stay at the bottom, will turn into agritourism, and more or less the rest of it's public facility. So the exercise that the mayor had requested for the council study session in February was, okay, we see this development booklet, we see all the pictures, we get it, you're telling a story. What is it that you actually are asking for? And what would ultimately be in a rezoning ordinance when you have to put it in black and white? And what are the units? We're concerned about density. Densities we believe is going up, but can you tell us exactly, Jason, what it's going up? So what we were able to do is break it down into a from and to. So what are they currently allowed to do with the property with residential estate zoning and the other districts? So if we were to add it all up, we came up to, you can see these buckets here under current zoning allowable density. You really could get up to about 770 units. That's what they have by right to develop, so long as it's done within the deed restrictions on the property, if that's the correct term in regards to the Denny Trust. Over on the right side, you can kind of see the proposed density, and we have it broke it down into the buckets of living types: independent living light, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, etc. And what you're seeing here is that they're proposing the 152 existing units on the property with about 994 new units. So you're looking at about 1,146 units across the property. So you're going about 770-ish to 1,146 is what it breaks down to. And the applicant can, I'm sure Carolyn or whomever presents will probably address that in their presentation, or at least hit on why they need the units and how they see it all fitting together in the campus. So some things to consider in this request that are unique to it. If you look on the right side, this is kind of like their development plan, if you will. You'd seen in the past, if you'd seen the development plan of the first and second submittals, you saw a relatively colorful, highly detailed exhibit that showed where all the little lots would go, where all the little streets would go, where the little parks were. They had lakes that were proposed, those sorts of things. And in the third submittal, they reevaluated the request and wanted to more or less simplify their request and provide them with a bit more flexibility in the future. Rather than micro design the site at this level, they'd rather get the zoning in place, get it cleaned up. And then my understanding is, as prospective developers of components of the campus come in, perhaps they partner with a home builder, for example, for some of the residential development, that the home builder would come in and work with Sun Health and come up with the design and then submit to the city a request that would likely go through what's called the preliminary plat process, rather than continually rezoning the property every time somebody came in. They'd like to get the zoning in place and then go to the site design level with subsequent applications. So that's a little bit different than we're used to. We're used to kind of, I don't know, maybe micromanaging a little bit more of the projects. You might remember Sunset Terrace, located immediately east of here, north of the Fry's Marketplace. We got, through the zoning process, we got well into the design details, street layouts, parks, what were the amenities, what was the street section like, what did the landscaping look like along Litchfield Road, all of those sorts of things. We even had examples of architecture that were tied to, certain architectural types that were going to be required as part of the development of the property. That was all done at the zoning level. But in this case, with kind of Sun Health at the helm, they feel confident that they will help guide these prospective builders that come in, maybe one or two at a time, to develop chunks of the property and still keep the vision that they have that's detailed in the document in more or less in an illustrative fashion rather than a highly detailed site plan, that they'll guide those projects and then we'll get the detailed development plans in the future rather than all right now. So that's what we have here. This is more or less their zoning exhibit in lieu of a highly detailed development plan. So over on the left of the slide, like I said, I've kind of itemized these things out for you. Again, the project is deferring to its design guidelines, which is the better half of the rest of the development plan booklet that you have, that goes through how are we going to design streets? What would a neighborhood block look like? What's our residential home architecture going to look like? What's our landscaping look like? How are we going to program the park spaces with what sort of amenities? All of those details are included in the development plan booklet. So while it's inconsistent with the level of detail that's been generally expected of projects in the past, those same projects did not in turn provide the level of detail and design guidelines that Sun Health is committing to in their development plan booklet. They have provided a graduated density and phasing exhibit. And so one of the issues that they've encountered in being able to even bring this project to fruition is, how will Luke Air Force Base and its operations and its concerns of particularly residential densities in and around the noise contours from their operations impact development. So they've spent some time working with Luke Air Force Base, and they've developed what they call this graduated density and phasing exhibit. And they can see, if you see here, the blue section of the project, with this kind of almost arbitrarily drawn line. It's not a planning line. It doesn't represent the boundaries of, phases of development within the project per se, but rather this is the area in which they're allowed to have up to 2 dwelling units per acre, right? Based on its proximity to the noisy parts of the operations of Luke Air Force Base. So if you're wondering why is this just kind of wantonly dashed across this large property, it's because it represents the area in which they're restricted to 2 dwelling units per acre. And then the area outside of that, they're proposing 4 dwelling units per acre as we get further away from the blast zone and other parts of the noise contours. And again, the applicant has been the one that met with Luke Air Force Base. City staff was not, I don't believe, at those meetings, so I don't have any more further details on that, but rather that they said that they have Luke's blessing in regards to numbers of units, types of development, and density in relationship to its proximity to the base. So that's the one purpose of this exhibit. The second purpose of this exhibit is to give you a general idea of how they would phase the project. So usually when you have projects of this size, 300 plus acres, someone doesn't just come in and build the whole thing, right? Just like the villages and other large master plan communities, it comes in its phases. Well, I'm not 100% certain of the relationship with Sun Health as a prospective kind of overseer of development, if they're going to serve truly as a master developer and install all of the infrastructure, or if it's going to be kind of a partnership between future home builders and future commercial developers to build this thing out in phases. But if you look here, you can see the existing La Loma campus here with the buildings very clearly shown on this exhibit. Their next phase one, you know, they've got a community center coming in, and they're certainly pushing forward on getting some new livable units as well built over here in the phase one section. Community center is down here. If you can see the phase one, the leg that extends towards the Camelback Road. But as it wraps around this community link road, you can see that phase one is really where they want to go next. Phase two will continue development down here along Camelback Road. And it's growing out from the center of existing La Loma Village. That's the intention of the phases. Later phases occur as you see 6, 7, 8, the further you get away from the village. And as I've highlighted here over on the left, the phase lines don't really represent true boundaries of development. These are just generalized concepts of when they think they're going to get to that, how they'll build out. It's anticipated that as these build out, it'll be somewhat more organic, and that the boundaries of development could, cross over between 6 and 7. I mean, it just depends on what builder developer partner they get and what part of the project they want to build, if that makes sense. So anyhow, but the phase numbers are in consecutive order and their anticipated sequence of when they'll be built. So the last place that is intended to be built would probably be the closest to Luke Air Force Base, up on the north side. We do have unique permitted uses, very restricted permitted uses on the project from development agreements and prior zoning ordinances. What they're proposing for the project are 3 buckets, if you will, of permitted uses. Within the public facilities district, again, they've identified the core area around the center of the project, with it having somewhat more provisions for mixed use and office. Homestead would really be more as you push out into the residential development that would be on the perimeter. And then the agritourism district, which you recall several years ago, we brought agritourism in the mix. We've seen a push, not just in Litchfield Park, but in other cities in the valley and across the country, to have this kind of farm to table concept where you have these places within urban development or urbanized areas. But this is kind of where they'll have some crop growing. They could have small special events. They could have even a short list of commercial uses, such as having, you could have an outdoor bar, patio lounge. We had looked at the Olive Mill, if you might recall, which is a very popular venue in Queen Creek, where they grow olives there, and then they package them and bundle them up, and they sell them in different forms, whether they're olives in bottles or if they make olive oil, those sorts of products. That serving only as an example of the types of uses that Sun Health hopes to attract here. And again, that brings, their residents will have that much more of a richness and diversity in the community in which they live to make it part of the continuum of care. It's all really, again, under this relatively large umbrella of a diverse mixed-use environment that all contributes to a higher standard of living and a higher variety of things for people to do and live, when they're 55 and over. I just wanted to put one example in. I've been working with Woody and talking to Woody about this case. As part of any large master planned project, you need to talk about infrastructure that includes streets and street networks, other types of infrastructure, how we're going to improve Camelback Road. But in this case, for an example, I wanted to highlight the Community Link Road. So as this project builds out, it's not yet defined when the Community Link Road will be built, and I believe Woody would like some more detail on that. But they do show you in this exhibit here, I highlighted in yellow, its connection to Camelback Road, pulls up through phase 1 on the west side of phase 1, wraps its proposed development that's on the table right now, wraps the whole campus, and then extends, to the, hold on a second. There we go. Extends to the east and then connects over to Litchfield. So that will be the spine for the whole development. So all of the communities that are in the future to be built in and around the core, which is in the middle where the existing village is, and then the homestead, which wraps to the northwest and then kind of to the southwest. All of those little individual projects will tie into this community link road, and it will be the community collector. So the types of details that they've included in the booklet that you've probably reviewed is how would we build this out? How would it be an attractive community? What are we committed to in terms of quality and design, as at the same time meeting the infrastructure needs of the project? So these are things that Woody's been looking at. And as we progress closer to hearing dates, he'll have certainly a host of recommended conditions or stipulations that would tie them to specific improvements to the property. But I did want to show you this. This is the primary road. Within the booklet, they also show what the neighborhood streets would look like throughout the development as developers come in. So those are all of the slides I have. Again, I tried to keep focus off more of the illustrative, like photographic type exhibits in the booklet, and just stick with the black and white stuff. It is a large rezoning case. It's a lot to digest. The big thing to remember is for them to really develop this property in the way that they want to, it does require rezoning. They are requesting an increase in density. And in return for all of that, they're providing you really the vision of how they believe the campus will build out. And they're committed to a significant set of design criteria to guide that future development, even though they don't have the details of that future development at this time. So that's what they're asking you to support. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions. And then when the applicant representative is ready, I can turn the controls over to, I believe, Carolyn, and she'll present to you her version of the slideshow.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Sanks?
Nope.
Apparently not. So
Okay.
we can move on, and the applicant can make the presentation.
Okay.
Hi, Carolyn. Hold on
Hi.
1 second. Who am I giving the steering wheel to?
You could give it to me.
Okay, let me just make sure I do it right.
Hold on a sec. Excuse me, Chair, we do have a question from Commissioner Lawrence, I believe.
Okay, I asked, and I didn't hear
Oh,
anybody.
sorry,
say
Deb.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was muted. So I may have
it. You
been.
must have been, because I didn't hear you.
Okay, thanks, Frank. So I've just been taking some notes between the presentation I reviewed about 6 months ago and this one, and there seemed to be a difference in the numbers. So I know that we had talked about at the meeting about 900 some, and maybe that's the 900 so that we're referenced tonight, but now it's up to 1146. Is that correct? So it's increased?
I think what's
I see a
happening.
head shaking by Carolyn, so.
I think Commissioner Lawrence, Chair, the applicant will speak to it. I think what happened was we really dug into how we're assessing units and how we're counting units. The interesting aspect of these of continuum of care is that as you start to extend into partially or fully assisted living and the memory care and things like that, you start having to understand, am I counting doors now? Because we don't count units the same way we would, like, here's a neighborhood with 100 homes, that's 100 units, right? When we start to transition the land use into a full set of assisted living and memory care, it becomes a single facility with, rooms in it. So we're trying to, as we distilled it down and did the exercise in January, it is staff's opinion that the closest representation to what's allowed in terms of units and what's proposed in units is what we've prepared for council and shown to you tonight. So I would say the development plan hasn't changed, but how it is understood and presented to you has changed, and we believe it's, I don't know if the term is more thorough, but perhaps more accurate.
Okay, and will this presentation by Carolyn get more into traffic mitigation and some of those issues?
I believe that they can touch on that. I know that Woody's been working on reviewing that aspect of the development. What are the traffic impacts on Litchfield and Camelback Road when you add, 1,100 units? So I
Or
will.
even, yeah, right now. Okay.
Right, and then there's going to be, significant roadway improvements are going to have to occur with Camelback Road in conjunction with McDOT. So, did you want any of my slides up for these questions, Commissioner Lawrence, or did you just want to defer to the applicant's presentation first, and I can come back?
I don't want to jump the gun on the presentation, so I'm happy to let her take the lead on that, and I'll just keep taking notes. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Now, let me see if I can figure out how to give her controls here. So 1 second. I think, can you request controls, I think, Carolyn, and then I grant it with a click?
It looks like on my side, I can just go ahead and share. So if this works,
Okay,
can you see it
yes,
now?
it worked.
Okay, great. Okay, well, let's see. Let's get it started from the beginning is always a good spot. Chairman and commissioners, again, for your records, my name is Carolyn Oberholzer with the law firm of Bergen Frakes, Smalley and Oberholzer at 4343 East Camelback. Here again, on behalf of Sun Health virtually. Paul Vanderveen, as Jason mentioned, is in the virtual audience. He's the Director of Real Estate and Development, as well as Lisa Gage from my office, Rich Gerke from Greek Pickett, who's on the design team, Win Lamb, who's our project engineer. And so, we have appeared before you last September, as it sounds like you guys recall, and Commissioner Lawrence had questions about comparisons between now and then. I hope to get you through those tonight. I will try not to duplicate what Jason has already provided. He gave a very thorough presentation, and you might see us flipping through slides because we had some very similar ideas about how to succinctly prepare this information. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive into a few things about kind of the unique nature of Sun Health and this facility is that we are starting from a partially developed property. So we are thinking of this in terms of a master plan, but it's really a phased commercial development that happens over many years in the form of this continuum of care campus. And the existing facilities are a mixture of 1, 2, and 3-story buildings that house independent assisted living and nursing units. And that's an important concept because, as was just discussed, the concept of units is different here. We are specifically counting both existing and future doors. And so we have an existing 152 doors, which are units for the purpose of a dwelling unit count. And what our zoning case would do was allow us to add 994 units. But again, under that same umbrella of that includes a skilled nursing door, an assisted living door, and not necessarily individual building units. So it is more comprehensive. It includes more, I think, than was maybe initially discussed in our original iteration. So that's why you have that difference in numbers. But this is the existing 152 units. Again, it's made up of this mixture of buildings. Last year, Sun Health completed a $4 million renovation of the interior with an eye towards modernizing and expanding the campus. Obviously, the current architecture is reminiscent of a Spanish Santa Barbara style. We are beefing up the design guidelines in the current document because right now on the property, there isn't a global set of design requirements that dictates the direction of the full campus. So this would supplement that and help to blend the new with the old. And we also have the medical office building, the MOB, as we call it on exhibits. And that is 100% occupied right now with medical professionals that serve the larger Litchfield Park community. So that's not specific to La Loma. And I should also mention that also on the La Loma campus up in the village, last year, they have had just short of 350 non-La Loma rehabilitation residents. So if you have a short-term rehabilitation you need to do from a knee surgery or a hip replacement, that can happen on the La Loma campus and does frequently. So when we were before you in September, we showed you this graphic. This is the depiction of the community center just west of the medical office building. And that then evolved into these schematics, which were ultimately approved in the design review board in February. So Sun Health has bond funds ready to spend on the community center facility, which is 18,500 square feet of space. It will have an event center component that can house up to events of 500 people without dining, 350 with. God willing, we can all get back together and have an event so big at some point in the very near term. But the community center is that next phase of the development, and again, was able to proceed to design review because it was not reliant on this zoning application, but permitted under the current neighborhood commercial. And here's how it all fits together. This is a graphic that details, and I believe you can see my arrow. So here's the medical office building, the La Loma existing village. And so if you can picture the existing zoning now, it includes this as the neighborhood commercial, and then the public facilities goes to Litchfield, comes around and comes north. And it comes kind of in a loop like this. What they're looking to do with this next phase of development is, again, include this community center, expand the the collector, the main community link, what will become a major link in terms of circulation, and then extend it up and around to facilitate the development of the next phase, which would be more independent living and perhaps assisted living here. But the collector is a private road with the future connection and future signal on Camelback here, a future signal at this location, and then wrapping around to a future connection up north of the Fry's development. The traffic study was submitted with this application. That is a part of the full application package. It does also include improvements to Camelback. Camelback will ultimately be, there will be a 70-foot half street that is constructed on the north side of the road as a part of this development, as well as improvements to the adjacent half street for Litchfield Park. Or Litchfield Road, I'm sorry. So Jason took you through the general plan amendment. I have that exhibit here if we need to revisit it, as well as the proposed zone change. He also explained the difference between the zoning district lines. This blue line is what we call the homestead. That's the largest zoning district. It's 155 acres. It caps out at 2 units to the acre. Again, that's inclusive of all types of units. If you contrast that with the pink area on the left, that's the residential estate zone that currently applies. And the existing density that's permitted in the pink is also 2 units to the acre. And that's where the sum total of what these existing densities are and the existing allowances got to the 770. And what we're looking to do here is establish the maximum density on the right side of the line at 4 units to the acre. And that would extend through the agritourism district all the way to Litchfield. And here is, again, that same exhibit. This is just, again, breaking it down on a per district basis and how we arrive at those numbers. It does not include any calculation for La Loma Village. That's something that we've had very detailed and frequent conversations with Luke about. And because that development preceded the graduated density, it's grandfathered in, and only new development will be subject to the new graduated density preferences that have a graduation of residential densities as you get farther from the noise lines. Jason took you through the uses, so I won't revisit those, but we do have development standards that are color-coded by use that will apply. So there are differing development standards that would apply to the Homestead District, the Core District, and the Agritourism District. All of those comparisons are included on this slide with bolded development standards highlighting differences. The Sun Health Residential products include a mixture of villa and attached. And I'm going to show you some residential concepts that they'd like to move forward with in that next phase that is a visual representation of these development standards. Also, the existing single-story attached villas that are on the campus currently would be facilitated by these development standards. And as well as we have the same comparison for the agritourism district. So the overall guidelines of the booklet are structured so that there is theming and design elements that are specific to the whole, and then there are subsets of those requirements specific to the various districts. So I'd like to touch on each of these just briefly. As we go through them, if you're wondering what the source is, there is a little note on the bottom of each slide that tells you the page reference from the zoning booklet in case you want to go back and double check anything. So for example, where my cursor is circling is page 65 from the zoning booklet, and on the bottom right, it says page 66. So there is a Santa Barbara Spanish colonial design theme that is going to be continued through the project, as well as principles of sustainability, of plant reuse and salvage, of landscaping elements, connectivity, and having a Sonoran desert setting as the landscaping theme. There are site design requirements. The site design requirements apply to the whole and speak to orienting buildings so that there is a connection with the street and the pedestrian access is obvious. There are requirements for street scenes to have varied front yard setbacks. And there are a host of pedestrian linkage requirements to incorporate the various districts to one another. And these carry on. Again, these are the page references are here, but this is applicable to the whole. Furthering the pedestrian linkage conversation, that also is represented on this page, also with very unique on-street parking requirements that are trying to eliminate the way that parking is viewed from residences and from the buildings. And again, I'll show you some representations of those standards as well. There are site lighting and signage requirements that invoke a dark sky and low intensity, low intrusion lighting scheme. Also screening requirements that establish barriers between uses, but also are not meant to be visually obtrusive in the form of materials and view fencing. The landscaping requirements include that there will be view fencing provided adjacent to open spaces. So again, we're going to have screening from residential to non-residential uses, but where we have residences adjacent to open space, there's view fencing required. There are offsets required for walls. There's a requirement for tree-lined streets and a landscaping scheme that seeks again to salvage existing materials. There are certainly areas of the property that have a good amount of vegetation and a lot that don't. So that would be a goal for the project, is to reuse what is there, but also then to further a native plant palette. So then we boil it down to the individual districts. And in the Homestead district, it is very residential. Most houses, it says, will be single story. Again, Santa Barbara's Spanish colonial influence style, walkable with the small blocks, not large expansive blocks. And this is a residential specific requirement. Every home has to have a porch, patio, or courtyard. And again, that's part of the landscape theming and requirement that there be access to open space. The core visual intent, this is where you would have more of the density around that existing village and the connections between the existing village and the agritourism district, and then the adjacent homestead. There will be more pedestrian arcades and significant corridors for inviting pedestrian experiences, but all within the context of a more dense area. And then the agritourism district is going to have more of a market style, low scale approach. Again, the idea is that this will blend to the existing hilltop development. There's also a discussion of preserving Aunt Mary's house, which is down on Camelback, as I'm sure you're aware, and connecting those with a farm to fork concept. They've been working with farmers to bring a retail farm stand to fruition in this area. They intend to get and source a lot of the food for La Loma from these future crops at this location. And so they're building relationships with farmers to secure that. The open space amenities are going to be established throughout the project. There's a hierarchy of those amenities in the book, but a requirement that with each phase of development, there must be at least 15% open space as each phase develops. And the code requirement is 10%. And you can see this representation of connection to open space in this exhibit for what will be the IL expansion area. You see the community center, the existing medical office building here, and the existing La Loma Village. And the concept for this is 3 different residential products around tree-lined streets, large open space expanses, and connectivity all throughout the project. These individual concepts, the blue concepts here, are these large house concepts. You'll see that they all have the porches and the courtyard elements, a reduction of garage dominance in the recessed garages on the first floor. There are duplexes, which are large casitas that are connected by wall, and they have individual courtyards and patios. Again, this is just a design concept to show the intent of the modernized representation of the architecture. And the hybrid loft concept, which if I go back here, that is up in the northern part of that next phase. And that has the parking for the residents underneath in this first floor, tucked under, with guest parking out front. So again, the accessibility is key in these units, and wanting to make sure that people do have easy access to their vehicles, but that the architecture is not significant from the vehicle perspective. So why do we need this rezoning? So the 52 acres, again, that are already PF, 14 acres of which are developed, that's that center piece here. The intensity of development and how to appropriately master plan it really requires that the lines be different than where they are today. In order to take the road north here, it cuts close to the hilltop. It doesn't leave large development parcels, and a full circulation plan. It really wasn't contemplated when only 52 acres was zoned here. And with the medical office building here, the focus was all down to Camelback and not how would there be a full loop road and how would it all connect to an ultimate circulation system. So this rezoning package allows us to establish this framework for this master plan. But as Jason mentioned, will enable us to develop it incrementally over many years. As you've seen with the current project, it's been in its current state for some time. It's just gone through its redevelopment on the interior, and now they're looking at this next phase of development. So this is an incremental project. It's not as though there will be a large master developer that comes in all at once and carries this forward. This is very much driven by Sun Health, and when they have the funding to proceed with a project, they will do it. And so we're at the point where we have that, we're able to get into the specifics here, but it makes sense to plan the larger development in terms of those spine roads, in terms of maximum densities, so that the full water, sewer infrastructure, everything that's necessary to serve the development is contemplated all at once and provided for here. So this red line is a very conceptual line in terms of it's not a meets and bounds legal description as applied to this exhibit, but that shows you about where that PF line currently goes. So you'll see that it captures just the front part of what the residential development is. So we really need this rezoning project to carry this part of this project forward. So with that, I'm happy to address any questions that you have. Again, our project engineer is available tonight, as well as our designer and our Sun Health representative, Paul Vanderveen. And so thank you very much. I know you guys have probably spent a lot of time in front of the computers lately, and I appreciate you giving us your evening.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to questions from commissioners. Anyone have a question or a comment?
I do. If someone else,
Ms. Commissioner Lawrence.
fine, but I do. Yes, thank you. So my question is, when you're saying to establish the infrastructure now, water, sewer, et cetera, I understand that. What I would like to know is part of the infrastructure are sidewalks being planned right now that will be built now, even if the rest of the development comes later. So, and does the property, I'm looking at the map, and does it abut the Mattamy Homes property? Can that sidewalk, in other words, be carried directly down to this? Mattamy Homes built a sidewalk and then stopped at the end of their property line. Does La Loma go directly down? Does it abut the Mattamy Homes property? And will that sidewalk continue? If so, now, not later, not future.
So the Commissioner Lawrence, through the chair, is that appropriate for me to respond? Just want to make sure I'm okay. It's hard when I can't see the whole room and see all of you.
I know.
I just want to make sure I'm not going out of school here. So the Mattamy, you're talking about not this Goodyear project on this side of Camelback, or you are?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so yes, this, you can see the homes right here.
Yes.
And so what we've been working with Woody and your engineering team on is how the county will classify Camelback Road. We will have to build it to the half street cross section, which does include a sidewalk. I'm putting you on the spot, but I can't remember in that cross section. We are working, Commissioner Lawrence, with the county on what that ultimate cross section will look like. It will include a sidewalk. Wynn can talk about what the width of that sidewalk is, or perhaps the how it connects to that side. But in terms of timing, that will coincide with the adjacent development. So that would likely be in a later phase. Those Camelback Road improvements are made. That will be triggered by the requirements of the traffic.
What is the timing on that? Did you say? You cut out a little bit? Sorry.
I'm sorry. So the current road that comes in from Camelback here, that's the existing connection. We would be working with the existing connections as we build out this collector road to make a loop here. And the we would wait until the traffic signal warrants were triggered here for the intersection improvements, which will come in when these parcels develop.
So are you looking at two traffic signals, one where the little star is, and then the other one where the existing road is that goes into La Loma?
That's
by the
correct.
center?
That's correct.
So there'd be two lights.
Potentially, yes. I mean, there will be, we anticipate that at some point the warrants for the signal will be met, and it's always going to be the jurisdiction responsible for the road to determine when the signal will go in. So that would be.
Carolyn, this is Paul Vanderveen and Commissioner Lawrence. Sorry,
No.
just to clarify on that, the traffic study does call for a light on the existing collector road there, where the current entrance is today. I've discussed with my engineer, and that's pretty close to the Camelback intersection, and we are considering just a right in, right out scenario there so that we don't have an extra light, making that more like a Grand Avenue, if it were. So that may be a right in, right out, or it would have a light based on the traffic study.
Okay, and the existing exit that goes out to Litchfield Road on the east side of the project, it looks like this one now wraps around the hilltop, whereas the one that's currently there that exits out to Litchfield is the one that's just south of the hilltop. And that one is a right turn only onto Litchfield Road. It's very hard, it's hard from this map to see how it integrates with the surrounding community, but I know that there's been a lot of accidents up by the street that comes out from Dreaming Summit School. People trying to turn left turns on Litchfield Road. There's been some very serious accidents there. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where are these lights going that will facilitate the ingress and egress from your project to taking into consideration some of the traffic issues that we already have. I'm in favor. My recommendation is just to try to get as much of the traffic mitigation done up front as possible. It concerns me when it says, when we have the funding to proceed, or when this is done, it will trigger that. I think that it needs to be done up front. I think the community would be much more supportive of allowing, 1,146 doors, as you call them, if they know that there's going to be a benefit to the community of taking care of some of these traffic issues. And one last point is, I was wondering, has La Loma studied the crossdock project, and have they taken a stand on it? Or are you considering the proposed crossdock in your traffic mitigation?
So that facility is off-site. Our traffic study obviously looks at what we're going to be generating, but in terms of participating in that process, Sun Health is concerned about the project and has weighed in with the county on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Anyone else have any questions or comments?
If I may, Commissioner Chair and Commissioner Lawrence, just to clarify, as we collect the comments from the study session, and I do relay comments back to Woody Scout and the city engineer, your concern is ensuring that infrastructure improvements related to right-of-way, sidewalks, and signalization for the purpose of both public safety, and it's what's currently occurring now, and then as you believe will be further pressured by the development of these phases, you prefer to see as many improvements related to Camelback, Litchfield Road, and this collector as possible. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that when Woody's evaluating the request to phase these improvements, he's getting your feedback, and I'll relay that to him.
Well, I know, Jason, even having all of the cement trucks, construction vehicles, everything else that would be involved in the development ongoing for many years, it would be mollified if you could do something for the community, if La Loma campus could do something for the community, or Sun Health rather, and take care of the sidewalk issue. I happen to have family that lives in the Mattamy Homes project, and going between that and trying to get to Fry's or whatever, it's extremely dangerous. There's no sidewalk on the south side of Camelback there, and there's no sidewalk on the north side. And there's a patch there where cars are going 50 miles an hour or more. And it's a very dangerous stretch. And to add construction vehicles and everything else to that, then I have a daughter-in-law that teaches at Dreaming Summit School, and she does not even go out trying to make just a left turn on Litchfield Road because of the dangerous intersection there. And I think that they could gain a lot of points, if you will, with the community if they could come in and say, we realize there's some challenges here, and we're going to address that right up front and from a safety point of view. My thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's the Design Review Board update. Is it okay if we accept the written report as the update? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And the next item is topics for referral to the city council. Anyone have any matters they want to refer to the city council? The next item is the minutes. Anyone have any suggestions for the approval of minutes?
I have a question, Chairman Ross.
Yes.
Is there a way to have the minutes distributed? This is not against Pam because she has a lot of minutes that she's responsible for, but it just seems for transparency and also keeping, when you are a member of the public and you go to the website to try to find the minutes, and the last minutes you could find are October of 2019, and now it's May of 2020. Is there any way that the minutes or whatever could be facilitated sooner? Just a thought. That's if there was a way to do it. Understanding staff constraints.
There has been some delay, and I apologize for that. Sometimes it's a matter of tasks assigned and what we do. The minutes do not go up on the website, though, until they are approved by the commission. But yes, I'll work on getting them to the commission much faster than I have been.
May I have a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
I move we accept the minutes.
Second,
I'll go ahead and second.
all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
minutes are approved. Staff reports on current events. Jason, anything else?
Sure, Chair and Commissioners, I'll be brief. Just some small items. Of course, you have the big item tonight on the study session, so no need to go there. Some small design review board items. Dysart Camelback continues to build out. At the last design review board hearing, they approved the new Denny's restaurant that will be located on the furthest south parcel next to Wigwam Creek. So if you can recall that development, the self-storage facility is quite vertical. I don't know that they're open, but they're pretty much built. Denny's would be located immediately west of them between Dysart Road and the self-storage facility. So that project builds out. We do have an approved car wash immediately north of that has not pulled any building permits or just approved at the design level. We anticipate Taco Bell submitting any time now for design review board to go immediately north of that. And then you have the Dignity Health on the corner. Then as of course you extend to the east, I think we've had some inquiries about an oil change place, but I don't know that that's gone anywhere. Of course, AutoZone's building out, but we don't have anything on the books yet for the interior portion of that site, although there's been murmuring of a medium box size user, but that hasn't happened yet. That's about it. Do you have anything else? Do we have anything else, Pam? Anything notable that you can think of?
No, I have nothing.
Okay.
I have a question. This is because I'm not quite sure where it falls on the agenda, but it's a question about City Center. So I would like to know what the status is in terms of the discussions on keep versus sell, sell versus lease of the properties. I feel like there's been kind of an communication gap, and trying to go back again and find minutes and see what the discussion has been on that. Are we trying to sell parcels now? Are we trying to keep parcels and have control over them?
Let me interject that is not on the agenda, and
Okay.
It's a violation of the open meeting law for us to take
Sorry.
it up at this point.
No worry.
Next item, commissioners' reports on current events. Anyone? There being none, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Somebody must second it.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Night.
Right. Commissioner Lawrence, if you wanted to speak with staff about any projects or developments, you're welcome to give us a call or send me an email. Same with Pam. We can give you an update.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Guys, thanks. By the way, thanks for making this so smooth tonight. I kind of like it. I can see you all perfectly. So it worked out. Good job, guys, on the first P&Z Zoom. So,
Yeah, good job.
and know.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Jason.
Oh, thank you, hidden behind the logo, Stephanie. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.